Unfortunately, my mouse disconnected, so we're going to keep on going. And I'm going to resume at the Explorer page. Now I've updated my Python file over here and its package, but I also need to update my test sample class. So I'm going to go here, and I'm probably going to want to rename this as test rocket bike, just to make it more readable. You can see it's going to make refactoring changes, so we do that. And now you see that run tests.py just updated. So if we go over here, we'll see that it updated from test rocket bike, we include it, right? In this case, you might imagine a test suite that would have multiple classes. And so we've got the lowercase naming convention. And we're going to keep that package name test right here. I'm going to walk you through what these package references mean in a second. But for now, what we're going to do is we're going to make sure this is updated. So we have rocketbike.rocketbike imports rocketbike, and that's because this needs to correspond to this folder name, and this needs to correspond to this Python name, and this has to correspond to the Python class that's in this file. So now we have test.testrocketbike, and we're going to rename this as test rocket bike. We're going to save that. Now, you'll notice that I just typed it in rather than renaming it. So if I go here and I try and run this code, I'm going to get an error. And many of you might have seen this. You cannot import test sample class from test.testrocketbike. So what happens when this error comes up is it's looking in test.testrocketbike to import test sample class. Test looks in the current folder. That's the root folder right here. So it's as if these things are minimized. It says test, so it opens up this test folder. It looks in this folder. This init it signifies that this is a package. So for it to understand this, we need this init.py. There's a couple other ways to do this, but this is the easiest way. And then it looks for a file or folder that's inside this folder. And it finds it. It's right here. But the problem is, this is called test rocket bike. And this looks at the folder, it looks at the file, and then it's got a different name. So I could say quick fix, and I could remove these. This won't help me because I do need to remove this. So I go to here, I see this is test rocket bike. I copy that, go to run tests, and then I paste it, and I save. And so you can see here, M is modified. I've modified this. U is unsaved, so I'm going to save that. Or maybe it's been updated. And now we're looking good. So now if we run this, it runs the files locally. Great. And if you see ran end tests and it says number of failures, that's great. You're running it locally. Now to run this locally, I am running run tests. If instead I try and run this tests right here, it will fail. And I'll tell you why. So if I hit go, you can see it doesn't find rocketbike.rocketbike import rocketbike because there's no module named rocketbike. What that means is it's looking for this folder, but it can't find it because we're running this in this folder right here. We're running it in test. For this to look up to rocketbike, you need to say you have to look up a folder and then back. This is not what you want to submit the assignment. If you want to solve this, if you want to do it for internal testing, you can do ... and then it will actually find it. And that just means up a folder, and then it will go through. So if I do that, it's got no known parent package, so it's got some issues. You need another init. So we're just not going to do this at all. Okay. When you run locally, run tests.py. This should just say import test rocketbike, import unit test test.main. It should do no other code. It should just have this. Okay. And then when you run it, you'll get your code. So I'm going to test this. It runs the code. That's great. Because my code is working, and I've made some changes, I'm going to commit again. So here, I'm going to stage all these changes. So you can add the plus to say, I want to commit this, I want to commit this change, and I want to commit this change. So it's got these changes are all staged. I type in updated names for testing. I hit commit, and then I can sync the changes. But if I don't sync the changes, I go to the code, you'll see last update was 8 minutes ago, even if I refresh. So I go here, click sync changes, hit OK. Bring up Firefox, refresh, and now it says I've updated this now. And you can see if I go to run tests, it's got this all working. Now, this is the way you want to make sure that it's actually executing your tests is you go to your actions. You can see it's running the unit tests right now, and then it's got an X. But that doesn't mean it failed. It just means that the tests may not succeed. So you go to actions, you click on the latest update, and you'll see auto grading here. If you click auto grading, you can see it's running the tests. So I've got two errors. I've got running the unit tests at the bottom, which is the most important thing, and then I've got some style errors. So if I look at these style errors, then there's some trailing white space in a lot of these things. For these assignments, you want to solve these as best you can, but we're not going to fail you or mark you down too much just for having these errors at all. You want to try and practice a bunch of them. As you see here, I forgot a space here, and I can start to solve these issues. And if you solve them, that's good. That means the TAs will not need to look too closely at your style. They'll know that your style is pretty good. It's good to kind of follow these recommendations. But if you have a couple of these, it's not a big deal. It's if you have like hundreds of these, it could be a problem. So these kind of summarize the issues. These are pretty low level. I'd still try and fix these, and you could do sort of new lines to break that up. And you can see here, it actually runs 2 failed tests. So that's great. Or runs 3 tests, there are 2 failures. Good. And 1 is an error. Okay, so that's good. So let's bring it back to your file here. So what we've got right now is we have run tests right here, and it doesn't have much going on. You've got your README. You'll want to make sure you update your README. Many of you have done this already. We have test, which has init __ init.py. This can be empty, but it needs to be there. And then it's got test rocket bike, and you'll want to rename the the comments, etc. And fix up some of the styling. This has your unit tests. Everyone's been pretty familiar, but it should be in this file. If it's in this file, it's not the end of the world, but it's best practice to keep this as just sort of a main entry point. What's going on in this file is this little sentence here, if __ name equals __ main, that means you're running this file. So if I click run, that's when this runs this code. So if I hit print hello main, it should run it down here. But because unit test fails, it may not actually do that. When I go over here, if I were to write in something here like print hello from the other side, if I run this file, we're actually going to get an error, so it won't do anything. But it would actually then print out this if it ever worked. But it would also do that when you run this code. So when it imports it, it would actually print hello from the other side. And you do not want this. You don't just want random code exiting or arbitrary code executing when you import a package. And that's why you have to put it within this if name equals main. So you don't want to have code just at the base here. However, if you want to run your tests, actually I wouldn't do that here. If you want to test your file out or maybe get some file sizes, you might want to add some code kind of like that. And so that's where you would go to your class name, whatever it's called. I called mine Rocket Bike. And here you'd say if underscore underscore name equals underscore underscore main underscore underscore colon. You could say RB equals Rocket Bike. And you could say print size of RB, and you could say plus sys.get size of RB plus bytes. Now we didn't import sys. One nice thing you can do is you can go up to you can say quick fix and say add import sys. And now at the top, it's import sys, which is where you want it to be. And now if we hit run, it's not concatenating the int, so we want to say string of this. And so it's telling us it's 164 bytes. So that's great. So if you want to do some analysis of your size, you might do this. We actually didn't create the Rocket Bike, so we're going to say sample variable equals hello, and we're going to call this RB1, and then you might say RB2 equals Rocket Bike sample variable equals goodbye with a whole bunch of exclamation points, so it's a bit larger. And then we might say print, we'll make this RB1, and I'm going to copy and paste this, and we're going to change this to RB2, and then we can run this. We see 48 bytes. This was the class because I actually didn't have the instructor. So now it's 48 bytes, 48 bytes. And then we could say RB3 equals Rocket Bike sample variable equals a list of, we'll just say range 1 to 1,000. That should be a range of numbers. We'll say it's a list, that is the range. We're getting an error here, invalid syntax. Oh, right, sorry, range 1,000. And we're going to add RB3 to this. Again, it's 48 bytes, so that doesn't actually help all that much. We have this really big file, it's still going to be 48 bytes. So what we conclude from this is that no matter what, Rocket Bikes are only 48 bytes, and you might want to look into why that is. If we look up, it's just a single sample variable, that's it. So you may want to do some additional look into get size of to look into some more depth, but that's that. So now, if I run it here, you can see it runs this file, but if I go to run tests and I run this, it's not printing anything out for Rocket Bikes. And that's because we put it in this main if statement. So this code block right here. So that's very beneficial. So So that's what you want to do when you do this kind of analysis, is you want to go to your class name, say if name equals main, and then write your code here, and you can print out whatever you want, and then it will only execute when we run tests. Okay. So we've made some changes. So we can add this here. You can say added size analysis code. And we can commit that, and then we sync it. And you have to make sure you sync it. And then we bring up Firefox, and we go to our summary, and we see our code. We see that it's updated right here. We've got our file structures all looking good, and we have our actions, and it's doing the analysis right there. And that's how you submit. So to give one more rundown of what the folder structure should look like, you should have run tests, which looks basically exactly like this. Update the comments here, but you shouldn't have your unit tests in here. In here, you should have your unit tests, and you probably want to rename your class. And this should be from rocketbike or whatever your class path is. It's this folder and this file name. Import the class that's in this, which by convention is the same as the Python name. You've got your init.py here, and it's in test. And then you've got an init.py here, and you've got rocketbike, and then all the references will work. And when you test locally, you run tests.py. You then make sure you commit, you sync, and then you can check your actions by clicking on actions, going here, making sure that your auto grade is running, and you can see here that it's actually running the unit tests. Thank you. Please stay tuned on CampusWire if you have any questions. Otherwise, good luck on the assignment.